I'm just reading an article about how an asteroid that's going to be approaching Earth in the coming days is worth $5 billion. But then I looked more carefully at why it's worth $5 billion, and it's because of all the elements and minerals in it. And I got a problem with that because what they've probably done is calculated how much of every metal there is and the current spot price on the metals and added it up together and got $5 billion, right? If we were to actually collect the asteroid somehow, right, and try to sell the minerals in the asteroid, there's no way you can get $5 billion from it, right? Think about what happens when a few people panic about Omicron and they get margin calls for their gold and silver. I mean, and then multiply that by the size of an asteroid, right? Now, I've noticed this problem ever since I was a kid, actually. When I was a kid, one of the big stories of the time was how the music industry was losing a lot of money from people stealing music online, right? Although we never dreamed that there would be a day that there would be YouTube and you could watch the music videos like instantly, right, at the time. And they came up with these wild pie in the sky figures. And the way they figured it out was multiplying how many people shared the files times how much each song was worth, right? I think at the time they were $1 or $2 a piece. Some people had tens of thousands of files, right? So what you're saying is that you got a 12-year-old kid who has 10,000 files on their computer and they're worth $2 each, right? You got $20,000 worth of songs. So what you're saying is that there's an alternative universe where the 12-year-old kid is going to spend $20,000 on music, right? If you're going to say that's what you lost, you're claiming that there's another universe where that would have happened, right? Now, where this gets really unfortunate is this whole COVID-19 crisis over the last few years has been full of figures like this, right? The economic losses, right? We blindly assume that anybody who could go out would, right? For example, or that every lost job is lost output, or we forget that there's a lot of jobs that could have been done remotely anyway, or that didn't even need to exist. Or we like to measure how many jobs we have. Think about it this way. Do you ever imagine your household was like an economy, right? Do you ever measure how well your household is run based on how many chores you have to do, right? How many little things you have to run, and how many phone calls do I need to make today to sort out everything in my life, right? Do I need to go shopping for a new apartment because I don't get along with the people here? Or, if I measured my own personal household GDP like that, what would you think about that, right? Now, another problem is how they measure the number of people who are getting sick and dying, right? I remember reading a statistic one time that even if you weren't at high risk of COVID-19 or the flu, that you should still get vaccinated because the average person loses how many days of work from getting COVID-19 or the flu. And they did a calculation that it was a loss of some number of $1 billion worth of productivity. Got to point out something. I had COVID-19 back in, I think it was October of 2019. I had just come home from Taiwan. And I remember just being totally out of it. And during that time, I watched a number of inspirational YouTube videos, and I took it easy. I cleared out my head. I was teaching at I'm still teaching there at Washington Technology University. You gotta remember, at the time, we actually had a classroom to teach it and all that. And I remember clearing my head and just being on my best when I got back to the office. And certainly wouldn't have called that a loss. I needed that mental break anyway, and COVID-19 just kind of forced it, right? We like to compare death numbers to other historical events, right? So we just have Pearl Harbor Day, and right now in the U.S., they like to claim how many people did COVID-19 kill today. It's running an average of 1,280. So if you believe the media, about half of a Pearl Harbor area. I got a problem with that. First of all, you don't know if somebody dies and they have COVID-19 in their system, does that prove they died of COVID-19? If somebody dies right after, within 5 hours of eating some baking chocolate, do we just label they overdosed on baking chocolate, right? If somebody dies within a few hours of having sex, right? Do we just label that as died of sex, right? That's the way first of all, that. And second, does every life lost count the same, right? Like, regardless of their health condition or their age, right? See, we have the good sense to measure quality adjusted life years, right? What they should have done, even if they wanted to report this, which I think is very difficult to calculate in the first place, what they should have reported is how many QAOIs were lost to COVID-19 every day, right? I bet if you reported it that way, the numbers would be a heck of a lot less dramatic, right? Certainly wouldn't compare anything to 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. It might have been a 9/11 every month, right? Certainly not every day.